What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Strength Squad podcast. Happy Wednesday. I'm your host, Steve Carty. No Nick Scopoletti today. He's got some grinder dates, so he won't be able to join us today. But we do have Prim Siripipat, former ESPN anchor and former collegiate tennis standout. She played at Duke. And we have Prim on today talking about her story in athletics, her story as a tennis player, her story developing herself as an athlete and as a person, but also as it relates to, you'll kind of see the theme of the show today is going to be like the theme of her strength and conditioning and her training / rehab throughout her career when she was young, into college, and then into post-college and pursuing a pro tennis career after her ESPN career. So awesome episode today. A little different speed, a little different type of guest today, but this was a very fun episode. Prim's a good friend of mine. Her and her husband Ben are good friends of mine, and finally got to have her on. So hope you enjoy Prim today. Before we do that, a couple announcements. First and foremost, make sure you guys go to our YouTube page, subscribe to our YouTube page, leave some comments, leave some likes. We love to hear from you guys. Make sure you guys go to our iTunes and our Stitcher as well. Same thing. Make sure you guys subscribe. We love to see you guys on there. We love to see your comments, all your feedback. Make sure you go to that. Make sure you guys go to our social media. Go like us on Facebook. Go follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Then follow us to our cars as usual. And also, don't forget Plant Warrior Protein. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Plant Warrior Protein. Great alternative to whey protein, guys. Me and my co-host Nick both use Plant Warrior Protein. Not saying that whey protein shouldn't be consumed, but if you are the type of person who just has an issue with digesting whey protein, or it hurts your stomach or gives you stomach pains, plant protein is a pretty good alternative to get some post or pre protein in without any of the stomach problems. So make sure you guys go to plantwarrior.co and use the promo code STRENGTH10 and get 10% off your purchase. Also, make sure you guys head over to our YouTube page. We have a couple of videos up there. We just put a recent video up on our YouTube about essentially how to do our 8 essential back movements if you're trying to develop a nice, big, thick, strong, veiny, juicy back. Because we know all y'all want to do that. So make sure you guys go check that out. But without further ado, we have Prim Siripipat. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into our interview with Prim.
Want more of the Strength Squad? You can check out all of our social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Also, check us out on YouTube, where you can watch all of your favorite Strength Squad videos. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on iTunes and Stitcher.
Stitcher? I just met her. We would like to thank our friends at Plant Warrior Protein, official sponsor of the Strength Squad podcast. Plant Warrior plant-based protein is easier on your stomach and contains a complete amino acid profile that helps you grow, maintain, and repair your muscles. It gives you 18 grams of protein per serving, and it's made from a blend of rice, pea, and hemp. Plant Warrior pledges to plant 1 tree for every item you purchase at their online store. Head over to plantwarrior.co, that's plantwarrior.co, and use the promo code STRENGTH10 to get 10% off of your purchase. That's promo code STRENGTH10 for 10% off of any Plant Warrior purchase.
Let's just start with talking about, like who you are, what you're doing now. Let's kind of go with the present, and then we'll kind of go into the past there, into some of your history.
Yeah, by the way, thanks for having me on. I thought for a second there, one of the requirements was to have a beard. but I guess I don't need one. But, I have my lip gloss, and I just left. Before we started, I want to tell everybody that I went to get some hairspray. So maybe we're off to a really bad start, because I know your guests don't typically leave to put hairspray on. Yeah. So my background, so I'm originally from Mexico, Missouri. I've really been involved in sports ever since I was probably 4 years old. I picked up gymnastics and swimming and dance. But when I picked up a tennis racket at the age of 7, I think that's probably when everything really changed. And it was one of those things that just kind of clicked for me. I guess my footwork and speed and eye-hand coordination, for whatever reason, it just clicked with tennis. And so I picked up tennis and just started playing with my family. And one thing led to another. And a couple of years down the road, when I was probably about 9, my parents noticed that I was excelling compared to some other kids. So I started playing year round. And then by the time I was 12 years old, I was beating all the girls in high school on the high school tennis team in Mexico. Granted, it was Mexico, Missouri. No, that's not to put Mexico, Missouri down, but it was a very small town. So my dad was like, I think we're onto something. So at the time, this was in the early 90s, and this was when tennis academies were really coming into the forefront. So we went and visited what is now IMG Academy, but back in the day, it was Nick Voluntary, and then also Saddlebrook. So it was basically down to those two in Tampa, Florida. So we went as a family, and my parents and I felt like Saddlebrook was the best fit. So off I went with my mom to Tampa, Florida to join this tennis academy called Saddlebrook.
And so was this like your family picked up and moved, or was this you went temporarily?
Well, it was a temporary situation, but only my mom came with me. And my brother, who's 5 years older, he was a senior in high school. He stayed back in Missouri with my dad while my dad, he needed to work. So he just stayed back home. Yeah. And so my mom came with me because I was so young. And we just said, we'll see how it goes for the first semester. And then after the first semester, we're like, okay, let's keep going. It was a little rough in the beginning for both my mom and I, just moving away from Missouri and getting acclimated. I had to get acclimated to 2 different schools. So in the morning, I would go to a brand new public school. And then in the afternoon, I would go play tennis. So I was having to get adjusted and try to meet new friends in 2 different environments. So that was a little challenging. But one semester led to 6 more years, and I ended up graduating from Saddlebrook. So
damn.
Yeah.
So this real quick, because I'm not familiar with like tennis academies and how they work.
Yeah.
Shock. Spoiler. I didn't go to a tennis academy. So
you and everybody else in this world.
Yeah, right. So it's like a tennis academy, but also a school.
Yeah, so they have that these days. Honestly, they have it everywhere, it seems to be, but especially at IMG, where it was Nick Voluntary, and now IMG bought it out. So now you have all sorts of sports there. But for back in the day in tennis, you would go to school in the morning from roughly 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. We'd get out of school, have lunch for about an hour, and then you're on the court by like 1 o'clock. And then you'll have 2 different sessions, but basically it's like 1 to roughly 5 o'clock, all tennis with maybe a break in between, 30 minutes to an hour break in between. And then you'll do conditioning, but roughly 5 days a week.
Oh,
so
damn.
you would do 1 to 3 with an hour break, then 4 to 5:30, and then about 30 to 45 minutes of conditioning Monday through Friday. Obviously alternating strength, weightlifting, and then real conditioning.
This is crazy. I didn't.
It's a lot.
I was unaware that there were like schools like this in the country. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, actually, there's more than there ever was before, because these days, I mean, you probably know this, but for a lot of the young athletes, the trend these days is for specialization.
Yep.
But back, a long time ago, 20 years ago, this is like a new phenomena, and it was very characteristic of individual sports, I think, because football and basketball, you can't really train for 8 hours a day.
That'd be a tough one, yeah.
Yeah, and so because it's such a physical sport, but with like tennis, golf, figure skating, gymnastics, ballet, like those types of sports, people train for 8 hours a day. By the time I was like 9 or 10 years old, I would not recommend this, but I was training 8 hours a day.
Damn.
That was not the right thing to do. So it's a lot. But these days they do it for basketball, soccer, baseball. I think they even do it for football, tennis, golf. It's a lot. Gymnastics for sure.
And so why would you say that that was not the right thing to do?
I mean, it's just overtraining. It's just too much. Like it's like, I don't even know, it's compared to the working world. If you're working 90 hours a week, I mean, there's a good chance that you could probably cut that down maybe to, depending on what you do, maybe like 70 hours, even 40 hours of work a week. And it's all about quality versus quantity.
So we were talking about the tennis academy, and we kind of left off with, like the overtraining. At least you felt like at the time you were kind of overtraining as a younger athlete.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a conversation that a lot of people are having these days among the strength and conditioning coaches, and particularly a lot of the coaches, which I think the strength and conditioning coaches and physical therapists these days, those who are very advanced and well educated and are privy to a lot of the up and coming research, they understand that you can continue to practice in relation to your sport. So you can continue to train as a football player, but then once you start doing conditioning and strength and conditioning, you don't have to do sport specific stuff. You can train and lift like an athlete, And so, we're friends with Nate, who works at the CrossFit gym, but he was the guy that I started working with 2 years ago. And I had taken a break from lifting for like 10 years, sadly. So, and I didn't know how to squat. And this is coming from somebody who played professional tennis and played with 2 world number ones when I was like 17, 18 years old. And I didn't know how to squat properly. That's a massive issue. And that's clearly an indication of maybe some holes of our programming, but also just shows like how many gaps there could be in elite programs. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
I was training with, I went to the, Saddlebrook. There were Marty Fish, James Blake, Sampras. I trained with Jennifer Capriati and Martina Hingis from the age of 15 until 19 years old. Both of them were top 10 in the country, or top 10 in the world at the time. So there were a lot of pros that were coming through there. But then, like, if you look at some of the athletes and what they were doing, we weren't training appropriately. But now all that has changed. So it's really interesting to see a lot of that.
And so it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'd like for you to touch on this, but it sounds like at the time, if you're kind of, hindsight, retrospect, sounded like a lot of specialization and not a lot of GPP. So not a lot of just general strength training or just skills training, things like that.
Yeah, a lot of specialization for sure.
So this big chunk of training time during the day for you as a young tennis athlete was just tennis, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, they were on top of it in terms of understanding that you need to rotate. At least they did that. So, Tuesday, Thursday, you would lift. Monday, Wednesday, you would do conditioning intervals of sort, maybe one day long distance. And then Friday was kind of a lighter day. And then Saturday would be just tennis, match play, whatever. So we were playing and training 6 days a week. But if you think about it, I mean, this is very specific to a tennis academy style of setting. But you're going to see a lot of these athletes playing this much and training this much. You talk to some of the basketball players, especially in high school and even middle school, they're playing high school basketball for their school, and they're also doing AAU. Or even some of the soccer players. You talk to some of our friends these days whose kids are just getting into the sport, and they're having to shuffle playing with. I don't know too much about soccer, but there's so many different teams. There's like the city league, there's a school league, and then there's it's a lot. So I mean, if there's one thing that I try to really educate parents and a lot of up and coming athletes and coaches as well, it's just be really smart about your training, and there's no need to, it's all about quality. You could get things done in 2 hours, probably 2 hours. And then once you get to the pro level, they whittle it down to an hour and a half, like the Roger Federer, Serena Williams, once you get to 25 to especially over 30, I mean, all you're doing is probably training 1.5 hours on the court every single day, 6 days a week. And then by the time you get to the gym, that's where you're putting in a lot of the work.
So if you could, if we're still talking about you as a youth athlete, if you could kind of go back and give yourself or your coaches, parents, or whatever, kind of like a bit of advice about just your overall tennis training, strength training, all that, what do you think would be the overall message?
Yeah, so the discipline was good. My parents pushed me a lot, so that was a good decision by them. There's a lot of parents will come up and ask, like, I don't know, how much do you really push a kid? Do you let them make the decision or do you push them? And really, my answer to that is you really have to consider the kids and their personalities. But I think a lot of them, I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for my parents pushing me a little bit. And don't get me wrong, we got to certain points where I was very burnt out and I wanted to quit. But kids, you definitely have to push their threshold a little bit. And that's how anybody gets to that professional level. So discipline is a huge component. We did that right. The overtraining, no one should be on the tennis court or field for 8 hours a day. Anytime you're reaching 6 to 8 hours, that's way too much. 4 hours, that sounds like a lot, but 4 hours at a very young age, depending on the sport, that is okay, but you can get things done anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day. So the overtraining and the volume of training, completely unnecessary, especially if it gets to over 3-4 hours a day. I would say a lot of injury prevention at a very young age. That would be the third component. So find a really good physical therapist, particularly a strength and conditioning coach. And this is hard, right? Because you're in this space and there's so many coaches. And even for us who are experienced and well educated about the field, it's still hard to find a really good coach, because everybody's trying to figure things out on their own and everybody is different. And then now you throw in parents who know their kid better than anybody else, but they don't know squat about strength and conditioning or training, right? Word of mouth is always the best way to find a coach. But I would say the third component is finding a really good coach and strength and conditioning coach that understands about injury prevention. So they can help you start doing prehab stuff. And that's one thing that I found was really interesting that changed when I went back and trained at my old tennis academy last summer, was they had us, they have you do a physical assessment before you join the program. And there's the tennis program, the strength and conditioning program, and they also have a physical therapist on site all the time. And they are associated with a chiropractor orthopedic hospital nearby. So you go do this physical assessment so they can look at your mobility, your strength, your weaknesses, whatever. And then they develop a customized prehab program that you do as your warm up. And this is all injury prevention. So I would go in there like every single day, 5 days a week. I go to my plan. I pull out, the Prim Siripipat plan. And I've got, like band work. I have knee issues, tendonitis. So I'm doing stuff to work on the strength and flexibility of my quads, all that stuff. And that was really interesting. And it's really never too early to do that. I mean, you could, from what I understand, especially from my PT. So I think you guys had my PT on, Charlie Weingroff.
We absolutely did.
Yeah. So, I've talked to him about that, but it sounds maybe around 12 years old you could probably start around 12 to 13, 14 years old. That's not too early to do some of the prehab. Lifting is a little bit of a different story. So, I would say that. So number one is discipline. You want to teach your kids discipline. You have to push them. Otherwise, they're not, if you leave it up to them, there's a lot of times when they'd rather be, playing video games or whatever. And there has to be a balance, right?
Kids being kids, right. Yeah. Kids got to be kids.
Right. Because I'm starting to see a trend, especially here with American culture, where we're really starting to, and I want to be careful with my words here because I'm going to sound a little militant here.
Just go unfiltered, go.
I'm starting to see a trend with the next generation because everybody is becoming more sensitive, generally speaking, right? We're becoming more socially sensitive, racially sensitive. Everybody also in the athletic space earns that yellow ribbon just for participating. So we're trying to be, we're creeping into that world. But at the same time, if you want your kids to reach a higher level, they're not going to get there without that discipline. But also, number two, watch their volume of training. Too much is unnecessary. Number three, find a good strength and conditioning coach for the prehab.
So it's interesting because those three components, Prim, they don't seem to just go with tennis or individual sports or team sport. I mean, that's any athlete, any sport. I mean, that's if you're a weightlifter, if you're a CrossFitter, if you're a tennis player like you, if you're a golfer, if you're a football player. I mean, those three components seem to go across the board.
Yeah, they really do. It's applicable. It's applicable. And I think I've learned a lot of that, especially once I got out of the tennis space. Can I have a cough drop?
Yeah.
Is there a way to Oh, yum.
There you go.
Yeah. Is it lemon flavor?
No, these are cherry.
Cherry.
But what I have upstairs is the Hall's Breezers, which that's like candy.
Oh yeah. I like the menthol. Stuff. It's good for that. Yeah.
Oh, you like the hard? You like the hard shit? Damn.
Yeah, I'm hardcore. I totally interrupted the conversation. I forgot what we were talking about.
No, it's usually how it goes. Don't worry. So we were kind of talking about you as a youth athlete. Now I kind of want to talk about, you're at this tennis academy. You're in Florida. What about after that? Where did this take you? I mean, you said you graduated there in 6 years.
Yeah. Okay. I was there from 7th grade until I was a senior. Until
you were a senior. Okay. So college after that.
College was after that. I decided that, because there were a lot of professional athletes coming through. And at the time at Saddlebrook, you also had tennis players, golfers. We also had some Bucks players coming through, the Yankees every once in a while. So we were exposed to that environment. So the option of playing professional sports was always on the table. That's because we were exposed to so much of that. But I knew how difficult it was. And more importantly, I think my parents they're well-educated individuals. So they always put education first. So I decided, I was like, I think, I wanted to play professionally, and we could. So back then you could start as early as 12 if you wanted to. So I was playing professional tournaments by the time I was 17. But I knew that academics was going to be the one thing that really held me up for the rest of my life. So I put more importance to that. So I took my 5 recruiting trips. I visited UCLA, Duke, Harvard, Vanderbilt, and William & Mary. So a wide range of, there was no similarity between any of those schools. I mean, it was like public, private, small, big, some party. Well, maybe not total party school. I should take that back. It wasn't looking like a Florida. But ultimately, I chose Duke because I thought it was the best fit between academics and athletics. So
nice. And kind of like what you were saying before, you kind of felt prepared for college plus college athletics because that's essentially what you had already been doing for 6 years, right? Is that kind of what you were saying?
That's a good question. I don't think I was actually necessarily, I think it's hard to prepare for college athletics. And this is more specific to tennis because for your entire career, you've been playing as an individual. So all of a sudden, when you go from an individual sport to college where it becomes a team sport, that's a completely different dynamic. Plus, you're having to juggle really tough academics and being a student athlete and the prestige of the institution. I got along fine. I got a decent GPA. I survived and, I graduated and all that jazz. But internally, emotionally, like what you saw on the outside, I looked fine, but internally I was not prepared at all. I was flipping out, especially my freshman year. It was a lot to juggle. And I feel like as adults, you hear a lot of people say, oh, I would definitely go back to college. It was such a fun time. Wouldn't want to go back. Wouldn't want to do that again.
You're like, nah.
I'm good, man. Like life as an adult, knowing what I know now about myself and my personality, I feel just fine where I am. Would not want to go back and redo that experience. It was really hard. It was really tough.
Well, I bet. I mean, I can only imagine balancing the academics of a school like Duke and, high level Division I athletics. I mean, that's crazy for a kid.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting experience, especially, in high school. I excelled, and it helped that I went to a small school. So I was the number one student in my class. I graduated with valedictorian honors and was top 10 in the nation at the time. So I was one of the stars at my high school. But then once you go to the next level, whether it's college or pros, like everybody's a star. Yeah, like you're not the only one getting good grades. You're not the only valedictorian. You're certainly not the best athlete there. And so all of a sudden I become part of this team that has 8 to 10 members, and everybody was top 10, forget top 10 in the country. Some of them were like number 1, number 2. And by the time I joined Duke, they were 3 in the country the year before. So that was a really challenging thing and a pride swallowing experience, because all of a sudden I was like this big star, and then I was just struggling to find a spot in the lineup. I mean, I played 5 and 6 in the lineup, and then not to mention, there's this just weight on your shoulders. So and this is something that's fascinating, but something that I've learned. And now I'm in school getting my master's in counseling psychology. I'm fascinated with sociology and psychology. But looking back, as a perfectionist and achievement-oriented person, such as myself, I put so much pressure on my shoulders. And to be a part of a team, my mind shifted from, wow, I'm not even, now when I compete and play, I'm not just responsible for myself or my coach or my parents. Now I'm responsible for 7, 8 other members on my team, plus the prestige and brand of my university. And when I joined Duke, we had this crazy streak. We hadn't lost an ACC regular season match in, I think it was like 10 years, 11 years. And it spans over like 110 plus consecutive ACC regular season matches. We had not lost one.
Yeah, wow, that's a pretty insane streak.
My team was the one that choked.
Oh no!
My freshman year.
Oh no!
Yeah, dude, it was brutal. But I mean, we were 2 in the country, so it's not like we lost to somebody bad. Wake Forest at the time was 1, and we were 2 in the country. So it was a battle of 2 really good teams. And I was up 6-4, 4-3 in my match, and all the other singles matches. So you play, for those who don't follow college tennis, but you play 6 singles matches, and then at the time they play doubles afterwards, so 3 doubles. So the other 5 singles matches, all my teammates finished. So I was the only one left, and all of a sudden the crowd just shifted over to me, and now I had just turned it. I was a deer in headlights. I was up 6-4, 4-3, and honestly, it was that moment where I choke. And everybody knows, if you play sports, when you choke, you're like a deer in headlights. You just turn numb. It's almost like this defense mechanism, because you can't handle the pressure. So your body just goes into shock mode. It's like when you break your leg or something, you just faint. That's exactly what happened. I don't remember anything. But all I know is I lost that frickin' match.
Damn, and you're a freshman at this time.
I was a freshman. I was 18 years old.
That's a pretty valuable experience, though. Like, to learn that so young and to go through that so young. I mean, at the time, I'm sure it was like, give me death instead. But that, I mean, seriously, that's got to be like a really like awesome, humbling reality check of an experience so young.
For sure, it was, and afterwards, we lost. And, we didn't lose a match because of me, but I certainly felt that way. And afterwards, we focused as a team, and we showed resiliency, and we decided we needed to work on our conditioning and work on some things. So individually, we worked on our weaknesses, and as a team, even during finals week, we added an extra session of conditioning. So we would get up at 6 a.m. or 6:30, and we would do extra conditioning. And then when the ACC tournament came around, we knew we were probably going to face them in the finals, and we did. And this time we beat them. So that was on the flip side of it. About a month later, we faced them again, and we all played the same people, and it was the same matchups, and we came out on top. So that was a good teaching moment. You kind of have to experience the really extreme lows to test yourself and see what you're about. It's a great process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
sports does that to you, man.
It does.
Really test you,
Definitely.
like, because you got to know how to win, but you also really have to know how to lose. You know, like it doesn't matter who
Yes.
you are or what streak you have, or it doesn't matter. You're gonna lose. You know, I don't care if you're the New England Patriots or like the Celtics it doesn't matter. Like, no one is going to win every day forever. You know.
Yeah.
Sports
absolutely.
is a pretty good teacher of that.
It is a really good teacher for that. And I think that, when I'm talking to parents and it is a big investment to have their kids play sports. These days it's very expensive. It's very time consuming. It affects the family. You're driving them around all over the place. And they say, well, how are my kids really going to benefit from it? Like, what do they learn from it? But if you allow them to participate in sports for a decent amount of time, and at least if they enjoy it, losing is a huge part of it, because as you go into the real world, like, I didn't realize that experience would prepare me for rejection. And rejection is a huge thing in the real world, right? Because you're fighting for jobs, and it's ultra competitive these days, and the workforce doesn't matter what industry you're in. But especially, you look at my industry as a sports anchor, and I mean, like, it's so subjective. Like, one day you could be the most talented person in the world, but you could get rejected because I am Asian. Maybe they were looking for a white blonde girl. Maybe they were looking for an African American man, and it's because of that you get rejected. But that's just a part of it. Or getting laid off. Everybody at this point knows I got laid off last year from ESPN. That's not the first time I got laid off. I got laid off 10 years ago. Or 8 years ago, when I was in Miami after the downfall of the economy. And you just have to, it's just a part of life. But I just think that what defines people is not necessarily how they handle success and what they do to win. It's easy to win. It's easy to be a champion. But the most difficult thing in life is learning how to pick yourself up and scrap your ass off the ground after you've had not just a loss, but like, just a pride swallowing, gut wrenching, like, awful, embarrassing loss. Like, that's the stuff that defines you. You know what I mean? And I think that's why sports is such a good teacher for kids, because it prepared me for the real world. But I will say that the difference is some athletes don't connect the dots. Or I should say, coaches or parents don't do a good enough job of connecting the dots and saying, like, hey, what you're learning today, this is how you could use it later in life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That was pretty much perfectly said. Nice job. I was going to ask some follow-ups, but you just literally answered every question I had right there.
It's easy to talk about losing when you do it all the time. I've lost so much.
It's funny. We just had I just had this conversation I was having a casual conversation with someone about youth sports now, literally the same thing we're talking about now. Youth sports now, and the issue of, because kind of something you mentioned before, getting a medal for everything. Not only that, but the helicopter parents, the parents who complain about everything to every coach and every referee. And I'm in agreement with you. I think doing all those things is really doing injustice to the lessons that sports will actually teach someone about life.
Right.
You know? I mean, if you're teaching your kid that if you don't win, or if you don't play, or if you don't get things how you want, that you should complain about them or be bitter about them, or who do I have to talk to do this or to do that? Or, oh, well, we should get a ribbon too, or we should get a medal too. You're really diminishing those lessons that we were just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think living in where our culture, particularly here in the U.S., is headed towards, and living in a capitalistic society, we want to win. And what we define as winning in today's culture is kind of warped a little bit. We define winning by being number one, the medals, being the most attractive person in the room, by money, by salary, by status. But that's just, sure, that's all great. And we all want those things. Make no mistake about it. I want those too. But that's not the only thing. You know, it's about the journey as well. And whether you are lifting and you're trying to get stronger, or you're trying to lose weight, or you are an athlete and trying to become the number one runner in the world, I mean, it's all about the process. And, you know, and this is why, you know, for the past 15 years, I've spent my world has revolved around sports broadcasting, because I got into it because I didn't want to leave the world of sports, and I didn't know what I could do to fulfill that void of losing my athlete title. Now things are starting to shift. I'm not necessarily going to leave the broadcasting world. I'm going to keep one foot in it. But as I mentioned earlier, one thing that I'm really passionate about is just the well-being of athletes, but also educating parents and coaches about how we can help our kids learn from sports. Because sports isn't, you know, we always talk about like sports builds character, right? We hear that all the time, that cliche term. And I found that we had this discussion in one of my classes, and come to find out, like, does sports really build character? Because if it did, we wouldn't be having a lot of the issues that we do have. You know, we saw what Jameis Winston did at Florida State, Johnny Manziel, Greg Hardy, Ray Rice, all those things. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I finally developed opinion, like, no, sports doesn't build character. Coaches and parents do, but sports is a vehicle to teach all of those things. But if we don't take the responsibility and accountability of using it as a vehicle, then no, we can't expect kids to learn those lessons, you know? And so, you know, that's one thing that I'm trying to do with my career that's kind of driven me, and majoring in counseling psychology. And, you know, there's this new field called positive coaching. So it stems from this new paradigm and field in psychology called positive psychology. So it's basically taking the bullying out of coaching. So long gone are the days where we see like a Bill Parcells who's just like yelling and cursing and has no connection with the athletes. He has his own office and they're doing their own thing, and it's executives versus the players. But now that's a little bit different. Now we see a little bit more like the Pete Carroll, where he wants his players to be expressive. That's like his West Coast California ways, you know? He believes that happy players make for better players. It sounds a little frou-frou, but I believe in that as well. So the times are changing a little bit.
So talk a little bit about after college. I mean, did you pursue a pro career in tennis? What was kind of like the post-college career like for you?
Yeah, so, well, a big component of that was when I was a junior, I ended up having 3 surgeries. So my body had started to really break down.
Why do you think that was?
Oh, man, we don't have enough time. Well, number one, it was the volume of training, overtraining. But number 2, I found out that I think my body was just going to get injured. I think so I'm small in stature. You can't tell, fortunately, but I'm 5'2" and pretty small in stature. And I learned this from Charlie Weingroff, my physical therapist, who helped me after my 4th surgery, which was in December or November, my shoulder. But I'm going to mess up the formula. Science is not my thing. Force equals mass times acceleration. Yeah. Did I get that right?
You got it.
Apologies.
Nailed it.
But the way he explained it to me, and maybe he explained this on your podcast, but basically, if you don't have a lot of mass, you're going to have to generate more force and more acceleration to keep up with the rest of the opponents, right? So in tennis, I found out that I could typically, you know, even without any training, I could do 60 to 70 push-ups consecutively. My strength compared to my body weight is the ratio is abnormal. So I'm very strong. I have the engine kind of like a Ferrari, but the shell of almost like a Pinto. So it just doesn't match up. And then eventually I think I just would have gotten injured anyway. I mean, I was just so prone to it. So, that's kind of an interesting thing. I think I could have done some things better, but I think I was just going to get injured anyway. So I digress. I had 3 surgeries my junior year, shoulder and both knees. My right knee was during the September 11th attacks, I will say, actually. Actually, I heard about it during my surgery because I chose to be awake for my last 2 operations.
Holy shit.
But
Talk about news during your surgery.
Yeah, I don't know how people got news of it, but I don't know. Nonetheless, with my body breaking down, I knew that sports was coming to a close pretty quickly. And at the time, although I could have played professionally, and a lot of my colleagues did, there was just not a lot of money to be had in it. Not that money is everything, but if you can't financially make a living off of it, or even like break even, I just didn't want to take that risk. I felt like there was more upside in just leaving sport. So I knew I wanted to stay in sports, and I called just about every Duke alum that I could, just trying to search and find answers. I called Eagles and like the Cowboys and NHL people and executives and so many different roles. And then finally my professor, orthopedic surgeon, said, yeah, you should look into television. You have a good personality, a good look for it, and at Duke, no one really considers like media or broadcasting. You're either pre-med, investment maker, or a lawyer. That's it. So my junior year, when I was injured, when I had a free spring break because I couldn't play. So I was like, okay, well, if I want to be a sports, and then if I want to consider television, where's the place to go? You put those 2 things together, and of course you get ESPN. So this was 2001. It was 16 years ago. I flew myself up to Bristol, Connecticut, when back in the day, today they have 15 to 17 buildings and over 5,000 people in Bristol alone. Back then it was like 4 buildings and 400 people. So yeah. I called a Duke alum and I stalked him, and finally he was like, yes, just come up. If you come up, I'll let you shadow me, and I'm telling this story because I want people, if there's any young kids out there, or maybe like adults, whoever it is, like this is how you find your path, and this is how you break through. This is like the type of stuff you have to do. So I flew myself up to Bristol, Connecticut, and it was cold, it was rainy, when everybody else was in Cancun drinking and partying. And
you're in Bristol, Connecticut.
And if there's not a lot in Bristol, Connecticut, there's like 2 hotels, and it's just, there's not a lot.
There's pretty much ESPN, and that's it.
That's it, man. That's it. And there's an elevator company, and they have one big building where they test all the elevators, and that's all that's
riveting.
Yeah, I know. People in Connecticut, they will understand that. So I shadowed for 3-4 days, and I was like, that's it. This is what I want to do. I shadowed. It was Reese Davis and Digger Phelps when they were doing March Madness. And then one night I got to shadow Linda Cohn, and I watched her do Sports Center, and then we talked afterwards, and she, it was like past, I think it was like 12:30 at night. And she was nice enough to drive me to my car in the parking lot, and she gave me some advice. Yeah, it was the real deal. And she was like, listen, if you want to be on air, don't come here. It's too big. Stay in a smaller market. Get your mistakes out of the way. Get your reps and experience, and then come join us. I was like, all right. So I listened to that advice, and then I started in a small market. It's not small in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, but I started, I just got my foot in the door as an intern, making $8 an hour after college. And I did what she told me to tell me. I did what she told me to do. Just get experience, and just scratch my way through. I went from intern to news producer to sports producer and writing. Finally got an on-air opportunity. Learned how to write, shoot, edit, did the one-man band thing. Was a reporter, then went to anchor, and then went to Miami. And then about 9 years later, 8, 9 years later, almost 10 years, I was at ESPN and I was sitting in the chair in the makeup room next to Linda Cohn.
You know what's hilarious is when I first got to CrossFit Hartford, I knew you before I knew who you were. She's like, yeah, there's Prim. What's up, Prim? Benny's girlfriend. And then and then Nate was like, oh yeah, Prim works at ESPN, and I was like, oh, that's the same Prim that I watch on TV. But then it was I already knew you as you, so it was just like, oh, right. Prim's on TV.
Yeah, I know. That's definitely, that's a unique thing about Connecticut, right? Because there is like this whole other world. It's like insurance and medical stuff, and then you have like this mini sports Hollywood, you know, and you have all like these ESPNers living in West Hartford.
I know, yeah, they're all like in and out of West Hartford. You're like, what? I went to college around here. This is weird.
Yeah, that's like the life though. But I will say that's one thing that was really special about the CrossFit gym, and I wouldn't have been a part of it, and I wasn't really ever part of it. You know, I didn't do the CrossFit stuff, but I started working out there because Ben, my husband. But it's such a unique environment. Everyone's like so cool. I don't know how to describe it. Everyone's super driven, very quality. Like you won't ever see anybody in there half-assing it, and everybody's so well-rounded and smart. Yeah. But also very sweet and compassionate, very family-oriented. That was one thing that's like very unique about that CrossFit gym.
It is, man. It's like this central hub, this magnet to those, like all those qualities you just mentioned. It's like everyone just flocks there, and everyone seems to always have those same qualities.
I know, it's unique to find that in the gym, but
so that's kind of like your professional ESPN career. Now, a couple years ago, you did mount kind of a comeback in tennis. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, you know, I had been at ESPN for 6 years, and then kind of along the way, I don't know how I make this short, but, you know, there were some things around, by the time I was like 30 or 31, I started going to therapy for one reason or another. Just because I felt like what I had done in my 20s were not the strategies that I used to survive and deal with stress and emotions. I realized that into my 30s, and it was no longer serving me. So I felt like if I wanted to get better, I couldn't fix this myself. I needed help. So I started going to therapy, and there was one particular session with my therapist that we were talking about my weight. So since the age of 18, I had battled an eating disorder. And so I was on the tail end of like finally coming over the hump and really healing. But anyone that suffers any sort of like issues or addiction or depression, they know that it's just like a lifelong battle. You're never going to fight it. But you can develop ways to mitigate it. So this particular session, we were talking about something in particular, and I won't go into detail, but we were able to connect the dot with one thing that I couldn't let go of that was tied to my Duke experience. And it was that moment that really unraveled everything, where I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that I've been holding on to this thing, and that this coping mechanism was somehow tied to something that happened in college. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, I realized I wasn't happy with my career at Duke. I wasn't happy with how it ended my entire athletic career. And then like this new, it was like a moment of healing, but also another moment of like, it opened up a huge can of worms. And so, yeah, I talked to Ben's been a huge part. My husband has been a huge part of it. So I talked to him a lot about this stuff. And he said, well, I mentioned the USTA several years ago had offered me a wild card to play in the US Open playoff series, where the winner gets a wild card into the real US Open playoff pre-qualifying or something. So you would have a chance to play in the US Open, but, very tough. And I had declined because I said, emotionally, I just can't do it. I hadn't watched tennis that much for 10 years. It was just too emotionally tough. I had this wall up against tennis because I hadn't resolved a lot of these issues. And he said, would you play today? If you could go back and play, would you do it? Would you do it this year? I said, yeah, I would. And he's like, if you could go back and really play again, would you do it? And I just kind of broke down. I was like, yeah, I think I would. I think I would be ready for it. And so then this particular conversation prompted the whole thing of like, I think you should do it. I think you should go back and play. I'm like, what the hell? What am I gonna, like, I'm working right now, and I'm working so much. At the time, I was working so much. I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, it's like, just go back to train and like start training and play this tournament, see what you can do. And then he was like, what if we did a documentary on this thing? What if we I
can see him. Yeah.
Everyone that knows Ben is just like he's an insomniac. He just has like ideas.
Yeah, I know.
It's like
I'm seeing him saying it too.
I know. I know. And it's the great and the bad thing about him. It's like he has an endless amount of ideas. But he's like, what if we did a documentary just following your journey? Because I feel like there's so many people that could really learn from your experience. And during this conversation, I mentioned, I was like, there's so many things I would do differently. Like, I've learned so much about myself as a person, but also as an athlete, and how my personality affected how I played and trained and performed and related, and how tennis was a part of my life and how it was too much a part of my life, just all this just junk. And I was like, there's so much I would do differently if I could do it a second time around. Like, what if somebody gave you an opportunity to do something again? Not that you regret anything, but if you had another opportunity and you had the chance to fix everything or do everything better, who wouldn't want to do that, you know? And so he said, what if we did a documentary covering all this stuff? Because I think there's a lot of people that could really learn from your story, whether they are coaches or parents, or especially athletes, anywhere from 8 to 80 years old, because it's all very, relatable to whether it's sport or life. And that's when it began. My session with my therapist was May 5th of 2016. And then it wasn't too long after that we had that conversation. And it pretty quickly, within a matter of weeks, I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And that's when the whole journey of the documentary began. I started training with Nate and started lifting and preparing my body. And it's been going ever since.
And so are you still pursuing like a tennis comeback? You're still like going after it?
No, man, I'm good. I had my surgery. Yeah, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. It is impossible to be, I was going to say, it's impossible to be a professional athlete if you don't make it a full-time job. And number two, with my personality, I'm an all or nothing kind of girl. I'm black or white. Yeah. There's no gray area. You know what I mean? So if I'm into something, I'm going full speed, 150 miles per hour. Like when I party, we're going into like 8 in the morning, whatever, if I'm like, so that's the problem with my personality is like, I went in for 2 years. It's just too much. I also had surgery. Like I tore my labrum and rotator cuff in November and I had surgery, my 4th overall. So I'm like, I'm also pregnant. So there's just like
not
a lot
happening.
Of stuff. It's probably not going to happen.
I read a bit in one of the articles about your comeback in the documentary and all that. Originally, the documentary was going to be called Closure. Is that true?
Yes. At one point it was Closure, and we actually changed the name of it to Second Life, because when we started this journey, I thought, and we thought, the whole premise of it was going to be finding closure to my athletic career. And the further along we went, I realized, and Ben realized as well, since he was just a huge part of this journey, and he was getting the behind the scenes look, is that it wasn't so much about closure. It was more about, it's not closing the chapter or having to say goodbye to anything. It was just more coming to grips and terms with this one sport that had played such a integral role in my life and development, and it was finding a way to continue to live with tennis and be at peace with it, and not having to say goodbye to it, but just keeping it as a part of my life. And also, it's about transitions too. You know, it's not about when one thing leaves your life, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, just that's it, done. You know, it stays with us regardless of whether that is a sport, an experience, a relationship, whatever it is. It will always, whether you like it or not, it's always going to be a part of our lives and our memories. And it's just about learning from those experiences and taking it with us and growing and evolving from it, you know? And so that's why we decided to call it Second Life, because my experience in sport, while I found closure along the way, it was helping me grow and move forward. I almost, like, if I had to create an analogy, like a visual analogy, it was almost like when you're walking out the door and your sweatshirt or something gets stuck on the knob, the doorknob, and it like pulls you back. And that's exactly what I felt with tennis. It was like I kept trying to go forward and I couldn't. I just kept getting snagged. And you can't just keep moving forward. You almost have to go back and then adjust to move forward. And that's how I felt with tennis. I had to go back, face all those old fears and pains in order to move forward. And I think that's an important lesson. If that's something that I would encourage people and like to share with people, is that I realize that the older I've gotten, I realize that there's just a lot of people who become static and stagnant because we're so afraid to look back. And listen, I'm not saying it's an easy thing. There's especially, we all have skeletons in the closet, and some worse than others. But sometimes in order to move forward and heal and grow, you don't really have a choice. You have to go back. And that was one thing that I really learned about myself. And I'm really hard on myself, but if there is one thing that I say that I feel proud of what I have done, is that I'm not afraid to look back. I'm not afraid to look at myself. I'm not afraid to look at what my family has done and say, you know what, that was shit. What we did was just not good. Or what I am doing right now is not good enough. Whether that's like sport as an athlete, or I also did it with, my relationships. I was dating and, I was like, I'll take a moment to reflect and be like, am I a good partner? Like, am I doing the best that I can? And if I feel like I'm not, then I'll work at it, So, anyways, but yeah, so that's why we decided to change the name to Second Life. And, so we are going to wrap it up though. We're looking to wrap it up, and we're going to we are interviewing a number of athletes because we want to show people that this connection between sport and life is very strong, and also transitions is a huge component of sport, whether it's leaving it or closing a chapter or leaving something. And the reason why we kept filming is because just stuff kept happening. Like, I started training, and then, and then I got injured. 4 months later, I got a cortisone shot. And so we have to take a couple steps back, and I have to change my training. And I go play my first professional tournament. And that's where my bachelorette party was. And we got married. And then I got laid off. And then Bella was diagnosed with cancer. You babysit Bella. Still till this day, one of my favorite pictures. And, so I got laid off from ESPN. And then this thing that I had been wishing for, not getting laid off, but being an athlete for one full summer. I had been saying it for so long. I was like, I just want to be an athlete for one summer. I just want one summer. That's all I want. I don't want a whole year. I just want one summer just to see what I could do. And it happened. And then I got injured again. And after 3 cortisone shots like this, then it wasn't turning back. And then I started school and I had 5 classes, and then I had surgery, and then I got pregnant. And then like, it's just like just stuff kept happening. So, and it was so much in like a span of 2 years. And so we kept shooting because we felt it was important, because that's what life is all about. You know, there's just a lot of good stuff, but also a lot of bad stuff, you know?
Yeah. I think I'm going to have a tough time anytime now my sweatshirt gets caught in a door handle and it's tugging me back. I'm going to have like a tough time not thinking about like that super deep like analogy. And every time that happens, I'm just going to go into like a very deep trance like state of thought.
Like,
and be like, this is life. Life is telling me something. Yeah. All right, Prim, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap it up.
Okay, cool.
Want more of the Strength Squad? You can check out all of our social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Also, check us out on YouTube, where you can watch all of your favorite Strength Squad videos. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on iTunes and Stitcher.
Stitcher, I just met her. We would like to thank our friends at Plant Warrior Protein, official sponsor of the Strength Squad podcast. Plant Warrior plant-based protein is easier on your stomach and contains a complete amino acid profile that helps you grow, maintain, and repair your muscles. It gives you 18 grams of protein per serving, and it's made from a blend of rice, pea, and hemp. Plant Warrior pledges to plant 1 tree for every item you purchase at their online store. Head over to plantwarrior.co, that's plantwarrior.co, and use the promo code STRENGTH10 to get 10% off of your purchase. That's promo code STRENGTH10 for 10% off of any Plant Warrior purchase.
All right, so before we wrap it up here, everybody, we are going to do a lightning round with Prim. Get to know her a little better. Prim, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready for anything.
All right, let's do it. Question 1, cake or pie?
Cake.
What kind of cake?
Any cake.
We talking like
chocolate red
cake?
Velvet, vanilla, birthday cake. I don't care.
Ice
Just
cream
give me cake. No. That's not real cake.
So not any kind of cake.
No. Why I can't believe you even asked that question. It's not even cake.
Come on,
cake
that's
is like
definitely cake.
No, man, that's ice cream. Cake is like the spongy, like the squishy, spongy, flaky. Yeah, cake for sure.
All right, fine. I honestly can't argue that, actually. So next question. Godfather or Star Wars?
I guess Star Wars. I don't know. I'm not really. I'm a girl, so I'm not really into either one. Like if Godfather comes in, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Star Wars. I'll go with Star Wars.
Because you'll actually you'll sit through it and watch it.
Yes. Okay. Although the last time I went to see the last Star Wars, I did fall asleep for an hour.
Oh my God! So, wait, which one?
I don't know. What was the last one that came out?
I mean, the most recent one is the Han Solo movie. Or are you talking about the one before that, The Last Jedi?
No.
Like the one that just came out, or the one that came out
Yes, the one that just came out. We saw during Christmas time.
Oh no, so that's The Last Jedi. One other one just came out.
The Last Jedi.
Like
what was the one before The Last Jedi? That was a good one.
Rogue One.
Yes, I liked Rogue One.
Okay, yeah, that's up there in popularity points with Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
But you fell asleep in The Last Jedi, huh? Oh shit.
Dude, that one did not get a lot of good reviews.
No,
it just felt very unoriginal.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode, but yeah, that one was not one of my favorites either.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what you're gonna say, but big dogs or small dogs?
Big dogs. Come on.
How's Bella doing, by the way?
Yeah, we'll see if
is she around?
Poopy. Bella.
Hey, there she is.
Yeah.
Sweetest girl in the world. Sweetest fucking girl in the world, man.
Our 3-legged pitty.
I know.
So yeah, once you get a pit bull, I mean, well, first of all, we're just not going to have a toy dog in our house. It's just not
happening.
Not happening.
How do you think Bella would get along with a little small doll?
I'm sure they would do just fine. They would be gone within a matter of 20 seconds. She would eat them.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's no playing. Like she would play like a WWE wrestler with that thing.
And just bounce it off the walls.
Like her idea of playing is being a complete bully in middle school. She just like beats them and nips at them.
Good for her.
Like, yeah, so big dogs for sure.
All right, next question. What is your favorite carb? Bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes?
Pasta.
Pasta. Okay, you're a pasta person.
Yeah,
We
but I mean,
like-
really, it's any of the above.
But of those, you'd go with pasta.
I do love pasta. Yeah.
What's your favorite
But
pasta dish?
Oh, I don't know. Really, anything. I love pasta with seafood. I try to be healthy, especially now that I'm preggers and I get like weird cravings. So I've tried this like mac and cheese. It's like a paleo version of a mac and cheese where you try nutritional yeast. It's going to sound very disgusting, but I felt like it was pretty good, you know, or you use cauliflower. It's like cauliflower as a cheese sauce. So
it's actually hilarious you mentioned that because I was literally just talking to someone about the same mac and cheese that you just described. It's like the yeast and the cauliflower. Really? Yeah.
I actually think it's quite good.
Do you? That's what the other person said too.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
I'm going to have to try it.
Yeah, you have to realize, like, you have to want your drive and motivation to want to be healthy has to be significantly higher than your love for mac and cheese, if that makes sense. Because you're like, I want to be healthy, and I know I don't want to eat like a whole thing of Velveeta cheese. So
let's meet in the middle somewhere.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, I could go on and on, like cake, bread, pizza, pasta. I love it all.
Yum.
Yeah.
Also, this is a good one because you're pregnant. How many kids do you want to have?
Well, if you asked me a year ago, honestly, I would have been like 0.
So now it's at least 1.
So we're having 1. Yeah. I mean, dude, kids are expensive. The tuition for college sometimes like $70,000. Like,
yeah, dude.
How do people afford that? I mean,
that was one of my brothers, one of the triplets we were just talking about. He just graduated from Hofstra, which was $55,000 a year, and he's got like a mortgage in freaking student debt.
Just so expensive. Yeah. So crazy. I mean, for now we'll have 1.
Keep it at 1.
Keep it at 1.
Okay.
Check back in a couple of years. That may change. I don't really know. We might want to give this one back eventually. So we might be down to 0 again.
Do some trading.
See. Yeah, little exchanges.
What is your favorite car? So, like, dream car.
Ooh, I love cars.
Okay.
My favorite dream car. Well, at the moment, I really like the G-Wagon, the Mercedes G-Wagon.
Okay.
Which is horribly not economical. I mean, I think it gets like 7 gallons a mile or whatever you want to call it. 7 miles a gallon. Yeah, it's really bad.
That is pretty terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big Ferrari girl, but I am a big like luxury sport. Like the McLaren's pretty fun. I like that. I like the thought of having a 500 horsepower car that's just completely unnecessary for the normal streets.
So
like when is anybody ever? Yeah, like when is anybody ever going to need 550 horsepower? Because we're driving through West Hartford, Connecticut, and we need to go from 0 to 35 in 0.3 seconds.
It's so impractical. Never would need it ever. Do you know how to salsa?
Not like officially. I mean.
You don't have like a salsa certification?
I don't have a salsa certification, but I feel like I can wing it. Okay. I lived in Miami for 4 years, and then people also just assume sometimes I might look Hispanic depending on how I dress and put makeup on. So I've somehow like learned to just wing it a little bit. Just go with it. Yeah.
Next question. Giving presents or getting presents?
These days, giving presents. Back in the day, for a majority of my life, definitely receiving. But these days, I like to give presents. I like to give unique experiences or just unexpected things. Like for my niece's 16th and 12th birthdays this year, I decided to redecorate their bedrooms.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's a great gift.
They've been dying for like, Riley wanted like a new couch or something, and Lily wanted a new desk. So I decided to just revamp their bedrooms and add those things. So that was fun.
That's a great gift because it also takes out, like if someone's looking to remodel their bedroom, it takes out like the options because it's like, all right, someone's just going to do it for me and they're going to make the decision.
Yeah, it was really cool. I took like before and after photos. It was almost like an HGTV thing.
Would you rather climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Climb a mountain.
Not a plane jumper?
When I was younger, for sure. When I was younger, I was very fearless and didn't care. Now that the older I get, the more reality sets in. I'm like, I could just face plant on the ground and die.
So you're like, give me the safest thing possible.
Yeah, I'm all about control. I'd rather put myself through agony and get a physical workout than just putting my life in the hands of a parachute that may not open.
That would be a terrible way to go, though. The one you mentioned before, just face planting and die.
We're going to Italy for a wedding, and Ben's like, "Oh, you want to do what do you say, like hang gliding or not bungee jumping? It was something like that."
Base
and
jumping.
I was like, something like that. And I was like, "So, are you cool? Like, if something doesn't work out and I hit that ground with our baby, are you going to be cool with the consequences?" He's like, "Okay, we'll go wine tasting."
All right, fair compromise.
Like I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but those are just like the things that, like, getting older, you just think about all the real stuff.
Gotta consider the important things.
When I was a teenager, I'm like, I used to drive like 135 miles per hour on the highway. I would sneak out. Just like the amount of fearlessness that you have.
Damn.
Break into stuff, steal stuff. These days, I'm like,
no way.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, that way safe?
Too risky.
Who's that person? Yeah.
All right, last question. Did you ever believe in Santa Claus?
Nah, not really. I mean, that's kind of like an easy question because growing up in an Asian household, like it's just a completely different experience. We like to adopt other people's traditions.
Gotcha.
So we would do Christmas and Easter just because we like Easter eggs and chocolate. And, we might even do Cinco de Mayo. We'll do, we're very open to like accepting other things just to be fun. So
just like sprinkle in all the holidays that you enjoy.
Yeah, it's cool. Like sometimes we would open our presents on Christmas Eve. Sometimes it would be Christmas Day. Other times we would do like the Hanukkah thing where you open up a present it was very inconsistent. So like
sounds fun though.
It was fun. We didn't really have like a ton of traditions, at least in the American sense. So it was a different experience.
That's hilarious.
So we'll see what happens with our kid. I don't really know how to do the Santa Claus thing.
Yeah, we're excited to see your traditions that you're going to, because you pretty much have all of them. So like
Chinese New Year.
Yeah, there you go.
Regular New Year.
Throw it in
Hanukkah.
there.
Yeah. Christmas. We'll do it all.
Why not? Enjoy all of life.
Yeah.
All right, Prim, before I let you go, can you please just plug everything, social media, the documentary, wherever you could find the documentary, when it's going to come out, all that.
Yeah. So you know what? The documentary is still in production, but we are going to finish it up this year. But I will certainly give you guys a shout out and let you know where you can find it. We're still talking to some distribution partners, but either way, social media, you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. It's Prim_Siripipat. So just figure out how to spell Siripipat and you're good.
Which I'm pretty sure it's just one of everything, right? Except for like there's no doubles, pretty much. Right? It's just there's no doubles.
Siripipat. Siripipat. Right. Yeah.
I think the first couple of times I ever tried to write it, I was like, is there 10 T's? Is there 1 P? How many T's are there? But it's just all one.
Siripipat. Yeah. It's like Mississippi. Like once you figure it out, you're good. You understand. Yeah.
All right, Prim, thanks so much for joining us. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. And Strength Squad, we'll see you next time. Deuces.
Bye.
Want more of the Strength Squad? You can check out all of our social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Also, check us out on YouTube where you can watch all of your favorite Strength Squad videos. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on iTunes and Stitcher.
Stitcher? I just met her. We would like to thank our friends at Plant Warrior Protein, official sponsor of the Strength Squad podcast. Plant Warrior plant-based protein is easier on your stomach and contains a complete amino acid profile that helps you grow, maintain, and repair your muscles. It gives you 18 grams of protein per serving, and it's made from a blend of rice, pea, and hemp. Plant Warrior pledges to plant one tree for every item you purchase at their online store. Head over to plantwarrior.co, that's plantwarrior.co, and use the promo code STRENGTH10 to get 10% off of your purchase. That's promo code STRENGTH10 for 10% off of any Plant Warrior purchase.